Hello, everybody, and welcome to episode 23 of the Unchained Vodcast. As usual, I'm Vellic. I am here with Brand and Kriss. How are y'all doing today?
Guys.
I am doing
Pretty good.
Good.
Glad to be done with the day.
Glad to be here for once.
You're the only one
Yeah.
that had to work today, Kriss. So.
Yeah, I know. And Saturdays are crazy. It's just, it felt like it was the full moon because the crazies were out.
Yeah, I've been not doing... Oh, I've been working, but working on writing papers and everything, not working on...
Yep.
And Brand,
Homeworks.
I think you said you've been sleeping?
Today I have, but because I've been working all week and weekend.
Yeah, catching up on sleep.
Per normal. Yeah.
I'm a little bit envious of the sleeping part, not the working part.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Though my work week this week was fairly awful.
Yeah.
Anyway, welcome everybody. Today we're talking about technology. Specifically, we're talking about why Camelot Unchained's technology just might be the best. And I mean that compared to everybody. Forget all of them. This comparatively low-budget game, small-scale game, may have better tech than pretty much most all the other MMOs out there, or that are coming out anytime soon.
Pretty much.
More or less. So let's talk about that a little bit. There are a lot of different things we can look at. And I need to play my video. I have a little video here. It would help if I queued it up. It's really Camelot Unchained's video, but
Yeah.
I clipped it down to the tech portion that we'll really want to be looking at and discussing a little bit. So there are a lot of things we can talk about. Main one, physically based rendering is one of the first things we really want to talk about. And by my understanding, and Brand may have a more detailed explanation of this than I will, but my basic understanding of physically based rendering is that it's realistic lighting and shadows and everything.
Yeah. It's basically all about light. I mean, that sums it up very vaguely.
Yeah.
It is all about light. And it's just kind of a change on how developers and even non-developers create the needs and assets to generate that realistic look. And it is a live rendering system. It's not for like conceptual 3D modeling. It's all about live environment gaming. And it just changes things where you don't have to create all these different map types like specular maps or metallic maps or normal maps. You still want to do those, like normal maps especially, but it takes away a lot of that and is more of a numerical value system than it is an art generated system.
Yeah, and the video's already kind of gone past it, but it will loop back around to the physically based rendering and the lighting. But really, that's kind of what we're talking about every time they show the new forest biomes at night and everything. And for a while, they had some pictures of different different textured balls that were reflecting light and everything. All of that is a part of this system, which is basically just a really advanced way of doing lighting and shadows to make some of this really cool stuff that we've seen lately with the new autumn biome, and of course before that the really dense, dark forest that they had.
Yes.
One of the things that I was trying to look at getting ready for this episode is what other games, specifically MMOs, are actually using a physically based rendering. Because I mean, saying that Camelot Unchained is really advanced is nothing if every other game's using it. I couldn't find much. I did find. If I could look at it. You know of one?
I do know of one.
I know of one as well. So
the one would be Star Citizen.
Okay. That was not the one I was going to say. So
it's a fairly new thing. So I don't imagine too many, especially not the existing ones, are definitely not really using it.
I seem to remember Black Desert did that.
I couldn't find anything. I specifically looked for them because usually they're kind of touted as that's their thing, is really good graphics. And I could not find anything about them using physically based rendering. So they may, but if they do, they don't. It's not very prominent on their website or anything because I could not find it at all. The one game I could find that does use it is EVE Online, and they adopted it in December of 2015. So they've been using it for about 10 months on their ships and everything. I found a little video that shows the before and after and everything of their different videos.
Okay.
Let's see, Zeromus. There's a little bit of high dynamic range stuff in the lighting too, the stuff that improves your lighting in dark areas.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, they kind of focus on the light and the value of light, because realistically in these dark areas you're not going to see anything. It's very difficult, of course, but
hard for gameplay if you can't see anything.
But we've seen some of the testing stuff, and there are places I think that really adopt that darkness, but they're playing around with that sort of thing, but it does play very heavily on how light affects things and dark values and light values.
And that's one thing that's really important to consider as well with this and with the different light and the shading. I know we've all played various single-player games that have used some very advanced shading, and sometimes it completely can crap out your computer. Case in point, another major game that uses physically based rendering is Fallout 4, which has completely owned a number of graphics cards at various times.
Especially the modded versions, but yeah.
Oh, yeah. I've got all kinds of different weather effects and everything in mind now, and it is so beautiful when it rains, but my game crashes probably about once every hour or two.
There are probably other factors involved with that crash.
Probably, but one of the mods is doing it. But EVE Online uses physically based rendering right now, but they don't really have like a lot of shadows or environmental type things to have to deal with. That's kind of their whole point. It's giant empty space with ships floating around in it. So them adopting,
if it's only the ships, it's single player instances, I believe. So it saves on the for the ships. In EVE, you're alone in the ship, I believe, right?
Well, it's like the exterior of the ship and everything does get affected.
Yeah, but the rest of the environment doesn't ask for too much resources.
Exactly, that's kind of my point.
They have enough resources saved up for the rest to use that.
Mm-hmm. And that's like whereas Camelot Unchained, we've got very dense forests that they're trying to use these things with. And they've already shown tests where they have thousands of buildings laid out that are all gonna again be using this for every block, every space. Everything is going to be factored into this. So it's definitely and as Zerma says, I mean they even have it set up so that the lighting kind of simulates your eye's ability to adjust to high and low light settings, as opposed to just having point A, light comes down.
Right.
Your character, your perspective, and everything kind of matter a little bit.
Yeah, it gets slowly darker as you go deeper into the darker areas.
Now, one thing I wanted to ask Brand specifically about this, because he knows more about game development than probably both of us put together.
Or no, both of us combined.
Is
the 3D world,
and especially with modeling and art and all that. So, what's so hard about this?
Wow. I imagine what's hard about it is the fact that it takes away from the artistic assets. Like before, you would make a specular map out of black and white shades and variances of gray in between. Now it's a numerical system, and that means math is involved. That means calculating all these different functions. And if they're trying to make a realistic system, they're probably using realistic value systems in real life, like light comes in lumens and Kelvin and all that sort of thing. So they're factoring all these different equations to mathematically bring out the best in live transitions from dark to light. And it's no longer just a simple, here's a specular map. This is always going to look this way. It now has to change based off of the values of light hitting it. And it's just a lot more involved, I think.
Yeah. it definitely sounds more involved. I asked you because I assume that most of our viewers, probably like me, have no idea really what all is necessarily entailed in that. Like, do they just flip on a switch and it works? I don't know. Yeah. Having seen the tests, I know that's not how it works. But
yeah, it's not too far. It is constantly like an object, like say a rock next to a tree, or even the bark of a tree has a map attached to it, a black and white map to determine how reflective or how light reflects off of it, or even refracts off of it. Instead of that map, it's now changing constantly because of the values, the numerical system involved with it. Now it's calculating the diffusion from the light based off the light's value rather than the map determining that.
Okay.
It sounds to me like it's more of a progression towards having to collaborate and merge programming and art together.
Yeah, that's exactly what it is.
Okay. Which really is almost like a theme with Camelot Unchained. I mean, they've got their procedural terrain and everything that they keep. There's a lot of areas in the world building anyway, where they seem to be kind of blurring those lines a little bit, pushing things forward a little bit. There are no other MMOs, like I said, that I know of. There's hardly any that even have this tech, and I don't know of any that really have it with this level of detail and stuff.
I mean, on that scale.
And this really does kind of, in my mind anyway, push their development, assuming they succeed and it works, push the game kind of to a level that's beyond a lot of other MMOs in a certain way. Crowfall, as far as I know, does not have. They have more cartoony graphics. They don't have any kind of graphics like this, any sort of lighting system like this that I know of. They've got. I don't think they're supposed to be touting the same size battles because Camelot Unchained, of course, wants massive battles. So,
and Thraxter raises a good point. It's nice eye candies, but for a lot of people, especially the hardcore PvPers, all those lighting effects and all those eye candies, they turn them off. But that's more a question to Brannerly. Does it impact a lot of the performances? Because I know for myself, and I know a lot of PvPers that lower the graphics quality to have a better performance, especially for that huge a battle they are planning to make. Will that impact a lot?
Yes and no. I've found that numerical functions actually calculate faster than pulling from art files. Like if every asset in the world has an art file attached to it, for specular map, normal map, diffuse map, it has like 6 different maps to it just to make it look the way it does. Every item has those, so it has to calculate every different item with all those maps. A math function, just like natural programming, takes place much quicker, in my opinion. So there's a trade-off there in that it does function much more quickly, but I think where people want to start turning their system settings down is because other things factor into that, like the poly count for a model.
And they are lowering that as much as they can also.
As an MMO, poly counts for models have to be much lower than, say, Fallout 4, which is why you might be crashing. So they're running the same system, but also with much higher resolution meshes.
Okay.
So.
Yeah, I tend to agree that. I mean, I'm not that big. I'm a PvPer, but I don't consider myself a super hardcore PvPer. If I can't, I usually have a pretty beastly system, so if I can't run it on at least decent graphics without it lagging in PvP, that game's not worth my time. That's the way I view it. I'm like, they made a crap of a game, and I don't want to play it now. Because I don't want to look like garbage while I'm trying to kill people. I want it to look good and get to kill people at the same time.
Graphics have always been, at least for me, also very important. When it was more PvE side, but I've always privileged the looks of a full set to the characteristics. So.
Yeah, and Zeromus has a very good point here. I mean, that one of the things we can do because of these systems is everything, instead of being just static and lighting and everything is dynamic and kind of alive. It's simulated life, but it's kind of alive. If we whip out a torch, we can light up an area around us,
Yes.
and it casts realistic shadows and lighting and everything, as opposed to just it's either an area is light or it's dark, and you don't matter.
Yeah.
Now,
I do find particles more than anything. I think more than this light system, which will integrate with all these other things like particles, but particles in general tend to be the most data consuming element of any of the graphics.
Yes, they're always a pretty good drain on the resources.
There will be lots of
chat real quick.
in this game.
Yeah, especially with the air system.
Yeah.
And that is a thing they haven't.
That also is going to pull a lot of resources because you'll have to calculate. The system will have to calculate on top of the particles the combination of those.
And that's one thing that they've tested some, but not to like the full extent. They haven't really tested all the different effects with different particle effects and everything at a high graphical level. So it feels like that's another area they're going to have to probably work on. But the game's not at that point yet. It's not at that development point. Every time that's one of the reasons they've been progressing so slow. Every time they improve graphics in any area, which a lot of people were complaining about graphics, every time they improve graphics at all, they stop and make sure the game's still running smooth, make sure it's not causing any performance issues, because that's one of the reasons I don't mind the slow progress so much, because I've been in numerous MMOs where you get in the game, they're like, it's going to be great, and you're going to have all these battles, and so on and so forth, and then you get out there, and it runs like sludge. And you're like, what were you doing with your testing? Like,
especially when they sell the game on massive battles.
Tiso!
So,
what?
I didn't hear what you said.
I don't know. I was just...
God bless you.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's one thing I'm really excited about with this system. I love particles, especially, and particles have the ability to generate light, or at least have a light object attached to them for the effect, and that just interacts with this new lighting system and real photorealistic effects. It's going to be pretty cool.
Yeah, I'm really excited. They've mentioned the physically based rendering before, and I never really gave it too much consideration until we started seeing the forests and everything come out, and then I started realizing, like, holy crap, this is pretty awesome. I'd never really thought about it much. Now, another area graphically that's going to be pretty cool, I think. You see, the whole time we're in these games, doing various things, we're on big islands.
Yes.
And so that's potentially an issue if, say, the graphics and everything for those islands are really lame, especially given that we're surrounded by water.
Yep.
So, it's nice to talk about forests and everything, but like half the world map is covered in water.
It's just going to be water. Yeah.
And so I was kind of excited when they said that they definitely are adding in NVIDIA Waveworks, which we have a new video kind of hanging out right here.
Yep.
Just showcasing kind of the example of NVIDIA Waveworks, which is essentially a realistic ocean simulator tech. For my understanding, anyway.
Well, not just ocean, but
just
water.
Water, yeah, water.
Most of the common videos out there do relate to the ocean because it has a lot more movement generally.
Yeah.
So even the lakes and everything like that will be looking 100 or 1,000 times better.
Yeah, I'm not saying it's going to look like this video. NVIDIA Waveworks does have settings, I think, for turning down some parts of it so they're not so awesome. So I don't think we're going to have like giant crashing waves necessarily and everything. I don't know. But probably not to this extreme level that they've gotten this cinematic sort of thing that they're playing here. But the point is, this tech will enable them to have much cooler and much more detailed ocean, and more, I think I should say much more realistic water movement than what we usually see, which is like, oh look, we're just kind of lapping a little. We're just lapping a little.
Yeah, and even Thraxter again says that after a few years you won't notice the sexy graphics anymore.
We
I
won't.
I don't think so. I think we're just it's not that we're not gonna notice them anymore. We're just gonna take them for granted. And any game that doesn't have that type of technology and quality
Yeah.
will be shut down.
Well, that too, but actually, I watched what Monsters Inc. 2 days ago, and then I watched
Hmm.
Monsters University last night, and I thought to myself, Monsters Inc. was a great for its
Yeah.
time graphically made movie, and
Stupid
I could
advertisement.
see how it paled in comparison
Oop.
to the newest animation movies just
Yeah.
after
Yeah.
this amount of time. And so in a couple years I could see us being like, oh well, that's an old school system because tech
Yeah.
is just moving so quickly these days.
That is a thing that'll definitely potentially be an issue. I mean, I agree. In 2 years, we'll look at these graphics and they're not going to blow us out of the water anymore. In
No.
2 years, we're going to be like, oh yeah, it's what it is. But in 2 years, we'll also look at other games that came out around the same time that didn't have these tech, and we're going to look at them and go, those look like
They're like
garbage.
crap. Yeah. It's like looking now, 20 years later, at EverQuest basic graphics compared to the games we have now.
Yeah, it's kind of an aside, but on the video now we have NVIDIA Turf, which is something they said they're going to try to do, but they're not sure they can do it performance wise.
Yeah.
Essentially, it's the same thing that the
Wave work.
that Waveworks does, but with grass,
Yeah.
and more so, rather than just having it be graphical, it has millions of individual blades of grass that move, but they also can be physically interacted with. So, like if you're pushing them and
If
stuff,
you're
walking
walking
through
on
them,
yeah.
Trying to set
they
them on
move and
fire.
stuff. Yeah, and so
Sure.
I assume to some extent Waveworks is kind of like the same thing.
Yeah.
Because we know that there's going to be some sort of sea transport we're going to take from island to island. There might even be ships that players can control. I don't know. We might talk about that later in another
Maybe.
episode.
You see, you got to the island topic, you got to this Waveworks, and I think to myself, why would they even have that unless
They are planning for naval combat.
yes.
Maybe.
Well,
Maybe.
I do have to say though, again, we're on islands. We're surrounded by water
Yes.
well, not all the time because they are really big islands. But there's going to be a lot of water too, so I can see some
Yes.
argument in having that besides just ships.
But you can do you have
But it
this
would be cool for
amazing
ships.
lighting system that's going to make the water look pretty anyway.
Mm-hmm.
Why
Yeah.
go through the effort of having this specific water Waveworks simulation unless it was going to come into play somewhere?
Speculation mode on.
Zero must now we're in
Yes,
risk of
we're there now.
triggering naval combat.
I haven't said it yet.
Yes.
I haven't said it.
I said it.
I have.
So I kind of lost myself here. Oh yeah, different games that use Waveworks. Honestly, I don't think there are any MMOs that I know of that use it. I did read about one that's coming out at some point that uses it, that talks about using it. I don't think any other MMOs use Waveworks. I know
Little about it.
Arc does. I found something
Okay.
saying Arc does, and Just Cause 3 is supposed to use Waveworks.
Okay.
So this is again like the newest
Yeah.
of new techs.
Yeah.
It's just
Oh yeah. There's very little of it out there to look like that
Yeah.
video we were.
Well,
displaying that
they
and, like,
haven't
3
released
others.
that take very long ago. Also.
Mm-hmm. So this is I think it's kind of a big deal, and so I kind of wanted to ask what y'all's impressions were because it's just water.
Yeah, but it's just water, but you notice it when it's lacking in quality.
It's true.
It's like everything, especially when they go for the PBR, and the rest of the world will really look good. If the water is not up to par, you're gonna notice it right away.
Yeah, you will. There are other things besides the water surrounding these islands where water comes into play, lakes, even
rivers,
visual
waterfalls.
effects within.
Yeah,
You have the water
water-based magic.
I don't know
Oh,
how
I
well
hadn't even
that'll
thought of that.
integrate. With if that's even something separate, that might just be particles within
Yeah.
the actual render system, but it could be the Waveworks as well. They could probably find a way to integrate that.
And I
Like
think
the wave crashing on the enemies.
Yeah.
and one of the recent Q&As, they talked about wanting to have, possibly wanting to have things like high and low tide that might uncover specific areas, or maybe during special events or something, which sounds like this could definitely be a part in making that happen. Nanolac mentioned needing Waveworks for when he skips his boulder from his catapult across the water. And that honestly brings up an interesting question. I don't know if Waveworks could do that or not, but that would be cool if when you launch a boulder or something into the water, it actually like splashes or something, or at least
it's supposed to be able to do that. Yeah.
Yeah, then that would be pretty awesome.
The foam when the flash of the water is actually like a separate layer of the system that reacts to the objects that come into contact.
Yeah, that is pretty awesome. Zeromos mentioned that the large draw distance in this game is a huge improvement over MMOs.
It is. So many games you have to reduce the draw distance to the bare minimum to be able to actually move in the world without lagging. So if you can have a really long draw distance without any resource hog, that's going to be huge. And especially for PvP, when we have archers and ballistas and siege engines that have quite the long range, if you have a really long draw distance, it's going to make a difference.
And that kind of goes back to why I've been saying I think Camelot Unchained is going to have, at least if everything comes to fruition as they want it to, going to have the best tech in the business. Because not only do they have these amazing graphics and special effects and everything, not only, I mean, just the other day, Mark Jacobs said, right now they see themselves at B grade graphics. They want to be at A. They can never have better graphics than Black Desert, but they want to be like maybe number 2, just under that, but with much bigger battles. Black Desert, Crowfall, these other games, they can't have the same level, the same size of huge battles, the same types of things that Camelot Unchained can have if they have superior graphics, which I guess Crowfall doesn't. But though it's totally different style graphics, so there's different things that are nice about that.
I definitely feel they're pushing the maximum out of what is very simple for them, and all this simple meshes, simple textures, and they're pushing it as far as it can go.
Yeah, there's definitely with the large draw distances, I think that is the main thing, is how they're trying to implement all these graphical techs without the performance issues, without sacrificing a ton in performance. And I think if they can marry those two things together, it's going to be a beautiful thing. And
it is also one of the main reasons they've said that they waited and built their own engine to be able to do those things and still save on the resources.
Exactly. And I don't want to denigrate other games or anything. but that is the reason. That's why they can do some of the things that these other games can't do. The only reason Black Desert can't have these huge battles is because their graphics are insane. If their graphics were toned down a little bit, they probably could have much bigger battles. But some other games, when they're based on already existing engines and stuff, they've got certain limitations that are going to be hard to overcome. And that's why one reason we've had to wait so long for this game. But the performance issue...
just to address quickly the time argument, as somebody mentioned on the CU forums, for a lot of MMOs, we hear about them years into the development. For CU, they were on the Kickstarter at the very beginning. They had barely started working on the engine. So the time we've had so far is not that huge compared to other MMOs that take 5-6 years to be developed, but we only hear about them a year and a half, 2 years before they're launched.
With a smaller development team.
With a smaller development team. Also,
or even a larger one. They're still taking their time.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. But the performance question, since we've kind of on the performance topic, does segue very nicely into the final big piece of tech I wanted to talk about, which no, not air.
No.
we've discussed
The
air before.
the
The
multi-server
multi-server,
tech.
the multi-pass.
Yeah.
The multi-pass.
Multi-pass. No, the multi-server tech. And I've gone back and forth with people on this over Reddit already, trying to kind of explain it. So the first thing I want to do is really quickly explain what is the multi-server tech, at least to my understanding, so that we can all operate on the same page and everybody in chat will follow in case any of them were also a little bit confused on it. Essentially, there's two types of servers we're thinking about. There's a game server, like a game world server, and then there's a physical server. Game world is like, when you're playing WoW and you're on Moonguard or some other server or something. That's it. That's a game world server. We're not really worried about those right now. Those exist, and we know that doesn't matter for this conversation. Physical server. Yeah.
The computer, the machine sitting in their office.
The physical,
whatever it might be. Yeah.
Yeah. And they have these remotely located and everything, but these physical servers, and they also have like micro servers which manage other stuff. But these physical servers, they have multiple servers all connected in a network, and each server is kind of responsible for the load of a specific area in the game within a single game world server. So if you're on this given island, say you're on the Arthurian homeworld island, you're going to be on one server, whereas people on another island a little bit farther away may be on a separate server. Now, in a lot of games, tech server, in a lot of games, there's not really a lot of interaction because it may be completely instanced, like Star Wars: The Old Republic, where everything was instanced. You just be like, I can't see through this door. Let me walk through here and go through a loading screen to get over there. The main important thing with theirs is it's intended to be seamless. There is kind of like an instance border, sort of, but you don't see it. It's not. It's seamless. You can see through it. You can see people on the other island. You can shoot them in the face with an arrow. And if there were naval combat, you can shoot the ship that's in the water, and they can shoot back.
And to add a precision, because Mark precised some of that, also explained some of that, they also have networked server that are going to be dedicated to the effects, to the assets, to the things like that, to also lighten the load on the clients, so on the computers, and on the servers that are dedicated to rendering those people in those characters in the world. So they have servers dedicated probably to air. They might have a server dedicated to that. On the game server, they have a physical server that would be dedicated to that. That lightens also the load of the game server, so making also those big battles even easier to manage resource wise.
And that's just another example of why making your own engine gives you that kind of freedom, because using a pre-built engine would not allow you to do that at all. The engine renderer takes control over all of that kind of stuff, and you don't get to split or divide those resources.
Learn something new, and learning is half the battle. The other half is red lasers and blue lasers. But for the multi-server tech, I think the coolest part for me isn't that they have these different servers to manage the performance. It's that they have come up with their own code to make them seamless, to increase interactivity between different servers, so that there aren't these artificial borders that you can't go through, or that you have to go through and load and everything. To allow you to hop from island to island without having to go through some portal loading screen that we know there's going to be in beta 1, but in the launch game, not supposed to be in there. I think that's going to go both huge for gameplay wise, but also huge for player enjoyment, just to not have to and immersion. I mean, not having to just suddenly be, oh, loading screen, or hey, there's an island over there, but there's no one on it, even though I can see it.
Yeah.
At least until you're on the island.
An island with
oh, there's a lot of people
mesh,
actually.
Like really low quality meshes, and
hopefully
they won't be that way. They will be high quality meshes.
Yeah, hopefully Desitech it won't run at 3 FPS at launch, but we'll see. I think if it does, we'll know that in beta because of how much testing they've been doing. I don't think it'll be a surprise at all if there's a performance issue.
I can tell you my FPS has been more than 3 in my experience so far.
Mine too.
That's not saying much. It's been more than 3. I can't say how much, but it has been more than 3.
Less than 60, somewhere in there.
Yeah.
But all this again is adding on top of the different tech that they have in other areas, like air.
Yeah.
They've got the ability interaction system where you shoot a fireball, it hits an ice wall, it causes steam, or you shoot fireball, hits fireball, maybe they explode and do damage to people nearby. We've got
you shoot fireball through an air wall, and it's gonna go even higher and longer.
Fire tornado.
Yes.
That would be pretty awesome. I would like to see that. Yeah. They're talking about dynamic weather effects, different types of magical storms and stuff that can happen all throughout the game world. That they're going to have to worry about performance and everything with. The building system, allowing people to build really complex buildings and litter the world with them and destroy them. Physics-based
Which is the
combat.
most fun part.
Yeah. Physics-based combat.
A lot of visual things happening.
Yes.
Physics-based combat, I think, because that again is a whole lot of calculation that has to go on for knocking people around and everything. As Zeromus just said, dynamic terrain.
Yep.
They've got the terrain and everything being generated actively while you're doing all this stuff, and
the dynamic,
they've got
biome changing also.
Yeah, I mean that'll probably I think be more gradual, but a lot of this stuff is. But I think the main thing, and they kind of mentioned this a little bit with the physically based rendering, I think, but it seems to be a lot of their goal is to make the world feel alive.
Yes,
absolutely.
Which is, I mean, a lot of MMOs talk about stuff like that, but they've got very specific things on how they want to make it feel alive graphically.
And I think that ties into a goal for the game on the player side is they want players to feel like they can shape the world, they can interact with the world rather than receive a quest and run from point A to point B without noticing any kind of change or having some sort of impact on what they're doing. And those visual changes allow them to run through forest and see how it changes based off of where they are. Their choice being in that forest, determines the look and the setting of what they're experiencing.
Yeah, and that is, I mean, even small things like I pull out a torch and it actually has effect. It actually lightens the area around me. I can see the reflections of it off of water and everything. Even small things like that make you feel like you have some sort of impact in the world. You have some sort of effect that you make. And then, of course, when you capture a territory, it slowly starts to change. Not seasonal, but the layout of things. The textures start to shift into more to match your theme and everything. There are different ways that they can do that to really make the players feel like they have an impact. Of course, building buildings, building up giant keeps. And we can actually really structurally change the world by moving islands and building huge buildings on them.
And then the seasons changing also.
It's, as Zeromus just said, a lot of games promise that they want the game to be alive. But then they're programmed with all static environments, it's all based on static tech that doesn't it doesn't mesh.
That doesn't change at all.
Now, for some of them, you can't blame them. I mean, this tech is a lot of this stuff is very new. And as Brian said, some of it they can only do because they created their own engine.
Yeah, and it's just efficient if you were to do like a seasonal change to have it kind of pre-programmed as a code to just happen, and this is the exact effect that's going to happen, and this is the exact way it's going to look every single time it changes, it's just efficient, cost effective. So you can't blame them for trying to make that effect look that way. You know, they're trying to fake that alive feeling because they're limited. But this is actually, hopefully, a true alive breathing, and well, not breathing, but you know, a real real system that changes differently each time.
Well, I think that is about it for technology. I mean, there's a lot of different text that's going into this game, a lot of different programs, and they're still working on a ton of stuff. For other announcements and stuff, they've recently announced they're looking at hiring new programmers for their Seattle office. I think they're expecting to be up to 4 now,
if not 6.
If not 6. So.
If you guys haven't noticed your emails, there's been a lot of random open beta tests for the day. So keep your eyes open.
Yeah. And furthermore, again, we are eventually transitioning to a new channel, probably in the next episode. So it is twitch.tv/abductedgaming. I will put it in a link here in chat so people can follow it. Please subscribe to that channel so you'll get notifications and everything when we go live. We don't want to miss anybody out. That's why we've been doing
be sharing his new links,
different channels
like he usually does right before the cast.
Yeah. And again, we will have another episode in 2 weeks at the same time, 6:30 PM EST, 11:30 GMT.
Yes.
Different place. Yeah.